Hi, my name is Zach Isaacson, and I am doing my final presentation for CIT 260 with Brother Jackson. In this presentation, I will be covering the importance of using arrays, array list enums, defining a static and non-static variable, and talking about some of the things that we have learned in the later half of this semester. I'd like to first start off by talking about a static and a non-static and what the difference is. Here I have defined a static and a non-static variable, and I have talked about what they do. A static class variable is one that's associated with a class, not objects of that class, which means that they only share with that class, but they are not defined in that class, because they're only defined at the class level and are initialized and loaded with the class itself. Static variables are also allocated memory when the class is loaded, which means when the class is not loaded or being called, the memory that is being stored is not available. A non-static variable instance is specific to a single instance of that class, which means that it can only be called in that class. This is commonly used when you see a this dot and then the variable name. Every time that the class is instantiated, the object has their own copy of these variables. Memory are allocated upon its object creation. So that memory is not stored at all, but is only made when that object is created or when it is called. An array is very important. Array is a container object that holds a fixed number of values of a single type. The length of an array is established when the array is created. After creation, its length is fixed, which means you cannot add or remove from it. This kind of array should be used with primitive values and making a list that does not change at all, where everything is in a fixed location. The placement and data within are all fixed. Since you cannot add and subtract from it, it is very uncommon that you use an array. However, in some coding, in some programs, you use an array to just describe the amount of items maybe in an inventory. In our game, I'll show you guys an example of when we use an array. An array list is similar to an array. The only difference is that it can be added and removed. This is very common to use and actually most used in our function in our program. We use that when we know you want to add or remove things, like we did with our inventory. We want to add to the amount, subtract from the amount whenever an item is used. So an array list in that sense is appropriate to use and to do. An enum. An enum is very special. It is only you use an enum when a variable, especially a method parameter, can only take one out of a small set of possible values. Examples would be things like type constants. As you use them, you increase compile time checking, and you can avoid the errors from passing in an invalid constant. And you document which values are legal to use. So with an enum, it is kind of like when you call a non-static class instance variable. You define all the types. However, you choose which types are available to see and which types aren't, which data is available and what is not. When you use an enum, you use an enum when you need to define and represent a fixed set of constants. And in our code, we used an enum to define our attributes. Our attributes all have a name, a district. They also have the gender, the skill set, and also the location. None of this is going to be fixed, or none of this is going to be changed. We will not add to it, we will not subtract from it. That's why we do not use an array list. However, we will not be calling all of those variables at one time. Sometimes we're only going to want the attribute name. Sometimes we're only going to want their location. In this case, an enum is perfect for that. Here's an example of us using array to find a certain, here's an example of code of us searching for a specific index in an array. As you can see, this class is the trap control class. the function is the check trap. In here, we have some pseudocode that says call search list function for meat. In this case, we are searching the list for a specific item. Once that item is found, using the item list and item meat, then I need to redo this.